Trust me, you don't need to be a musician to benefit from this band manager. Before we get started, I just want to thank everybody for the support that we've had for the past month. Because of you guys, we had the most successful month that we've ever had on YouTube. But you want to know something? I want to push this even further. I want next month, or this month, to be the most successful month that I've ever had on YouTube again. So if you guys want to make that happen, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel to be notified about any of our future updates. And I will go ahead and say something. There are definitely some giveaways happening here in the future. I just don't know what exactly is going on yet. So trust me when I say that a lot of cool stuff is happening and you don't want to miss anything that's happening on this channel. Now let's talk about E.T.C, but more specifically, let's talk about what decks he can fit into. And I'm just going to go ahead and spoil the sauce. Here are the decks that I'm looking at, but I've already put like names on them, so you can't really tell what's going on with these. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. The first deck that I'm going to show you is the deck that I already showcased on my previous video, but I'm here to say that this actually feels like a legitimate way to use E.T.C and APM Priest. So in case you guys haven't seen that video already, what's in the band? Well, it's Jailer, Theatar, and honestly, I want to get rid of the Vanndarr, but I really don't know what card to get rid of in order to make room for this. So this card could be like essentially any flex card that you want, but the idea is if you need to try and combo and actually kill your opponent versus just endlessly stalling the game and bringing back a bunch of death rattles, maybe this is a way to go. And the reasoning behind it is because if you kill off the War Rider and you haven't played any of your switcheroos, you can easily draw all the cards. So that is the thought process behind that. But the other two cards I think are absolutely necessary. Jailer is probably going to be something you're going to be seeing in a lot of E.T.C decks, and I would like to say that maybe I had a hand at making this popular, but E.T.C works so, the Jailer works so well in E.T.C because if there's ever a situation to where you don't want your elementals to die, then you can just have 3 elementals on the field as immune minions, and the only way to get rid of them is hardcore removal like Twisting Nether or Destruction Concoctions from Rogue. So this is a really awesome idea to play APM Priest if you're wanting to do things unconventional, I guess, and try to make your opponent probably as mad as possible. I'm not gonna lie, this is the most fun deck that I've played with since E.T.C has gone live, but it hasn't been the best performing deck. So that raises the question, what other decks can E.T.C perform well in? Well, how about a Vanndarr deck? That's right, Vanndarr Rogue is apparently something that people are playing, and Donkey was able to reach top 200 with this list. Now, granted, this is during a time where a lot of people were experimenting, but I will say right now, in top 1000 Legend, people tend to play the safe stuff more than the fun stuff. So the fact that they were able to do extremely well with this list says a lot, and this is probably going to be the next video, the next deck spotlight that I showcase, because this deck is not easy, and some of you guys may be looking at this wondering what the hell you're supposed to do. But you're supposed to do one of 3 things, but it's mostly one of 2 things. The main idea, you play Vanndarr. How do you play Vanndarr in a deck where he's literally one of the most expensive cards? Well, you Shadow Step it, of course. You Shadow Step it, make it 2 mana, so all of your 3 mana cards become 0. Or you could play Prep into Bone Spike with Vanndarr, and you can play it as early as turn 2 for the value. Now, why do you want all these cards to cost 0 mana? Well, because, well, a 1 mana Edwin is pretty freaking good. A 0 mana Field Contact into top deck nothing but Battlecry minions for 0 mana also works. And you also have like this mini Edwin in the form of Traveling Merchant, which if you do play with Brand, by the way, which also costs 0 mana if you get lucky, then you just make a gigantic board that your opponent can't clear. And I think this is like very similar to how old school, not old school, but before the location was nerfed, this is how Miracle Rogue seemed to play, just vomit the biggest amount of stats as early as possible. But this is a way of doing it without the location. Rogue, right? Rogue's always going to find a way to break the meta one way or another. But I don't think this is like a meta breaker to where this is going to be like one of the best decks that you're going to see on the ladder. This is just a new archetype that I believe has potential, but its potential is very limited to what the aggressive meta is right now, and there still is a lot of aggressive decks running around on ladder right now, and this deck does not let you misplay. If you miss 1 or 2 things, you are probably going to throw so many percents that you don't want to play this deck again. So if you're looking at this deck being like, this is really cool, take a moment, watch someone else play it, see if you understand the gameplay, because this is a very difficult deck to pilot. The next deck is a deck of my own creation, and I don't believe this is the best exact 40 card, is this 40 cards? Yeah, 40 card list because I decided to put Renathal in here. But the reason why I'm making this into a Reno deck is so that way E.T.C can run duplicates potentially of other cards that we want. But apparently this isn't the way that I made the list, so you could pretty much change the E.T.C ban to whatever duplicates you potentially want in the deck, such as Inequality, Equality might be a pretty good card to have a duplicate of. And I originally was thinking about putting the Countess in this deck, so that way if I were to draw out most of my cards, I could eventually, you know, just get the value out of the Countess, even though I do have some neutral cards. But if you guys remember how the Jailer worked in Giga Chad Paladin, the one that that Bunny Hopper made a couple of months ago, this deck kind of plays very similar to where the goal is to play the Jailer, so that way your Countess is automatically active when you have a 0-card deck. And again, because of the E.T.C, you have ways of being able to put like Rivendairs at the bottom of your deck. Granted, if you do have immune minions, this isn't the greatest thing in the world, but if you're going up against an opponent that has a lot of removal, it could work so well. But I don't think Rivendare is really the way to go. I think the way that you want to play this deck in particular is by putting in the duplicates that you can't afford to run outside of Order in the Court, because this is the most important card in the deck. But I got this idea from Otsu, which you'll see in the next deck coming up ahead, where he decided to put in duplicates of the E.T.C cards in a Reno deck, and this might be one of the best ways to play Reno right now, but I have to admit, I only went like 1 in 3 with this deck while testing, so this is very much a deck that you could mess around with some cards. Maybe you don't like the Service Bell, maybe you don't see enough weapon techs in order to leave the Viper in here, but I pretty much tried to tech for everything, and I had a lot of fun playing this deck. But again, I'm at top legend. That's the reason why I'm not winning so many games. I do believe these decks will perform better at a lower MMR, but just know that these aren't the quote-unquote best decks in the meta. This is just the way that a lot of people are testing E.T.C right now, and I think that Reno has a lot of potential, but it's probably not going to be the best way to play E.T.C. Next up, we have the deck that inspired my my Reno Paladin, because it's Reno Blood DK, also with Renathal, I believe. There's actually no Renathal in this deck. Okay, so there's no Renathal in this deck. It's just a 30-card deck, and this is a lot closer to what people were playing. You've probably seen this in some other people's videos already, because I believe this is just, you know, a Twitter post a lot of people took from. But, I mean, the argument still stands how, like, Blood DK could very well go down this Reno archetype, which was somewhat playable in the past, because of, you know, being able to have 50, 60, 70 HP in some games. So I think that, like, E.T.C, like, running the duplicates for your Reno deck does have potential in Death Knight specifically, just because of how much life gain there is. There's even a Sire Denathrius in the deck, which I honestly don't 100% agree with. But Otsu was able to go 3-0 in top 100 Legend, which is more than any of the decks that I've shown you so far that I've been able to play. Granted, I'm not the best pilot, and Otsu is a cracked player from the French community, but at the same time, you pick your battles with this deck. Like, you don't want to just run this deck all the way up to Legend, because it's going to be a very excruciating climb because of, number one, how long the games take. Number two, Reno only has so much potential. But again, if you're wanting to play Reno, I think that E.T.C can kind of fill in one of its weaknesses of not being able to run duplicate cards. The biggest issue being you do have to play this for 4 mana. But other than that, I do believe that, you know, Reno has some capabilities. It's just a matter of what class it fits the best into, and I do believe it's probably Death Knight. Now let's go ahead and jump into some of the more aggressive decks, because guess what? Miracle Rogue is still very good right now, even though it may not need E.T.C, but J. Alex was actually playing this deck yesterday, and he decided on these cards in the ban. This kind of shows you a different way of being able to play E.T.C. Sometimes you can use E.T.C as, like, you know, your very specific toolkit when you want to be able to counteract, like, combo, for example, which is why Theatar, Jailer are super common to see in E.T.C, because they counteract some of these decks' weaknesses that they go into. However, this deck is deciding to play E.T.C for more of like a tempo game plan, but sometimes it depends on what kind of tempo game plan you want at the time. Sometimes you want the 2-mana Astalor in order to combo with your Shadow Steps. Other times, you just simply want some damage. So what J. Alex is pretty much saying is that this deck is already good by itself, and it doesn't really need a gimmick from E.T.C to where you need to sideboard against specific matchups. You can just use him as a toolkit where it's like, these 3 cards are good in almost every single situation. It's just about which situation fits the best in whatever game plan you're currently playing out. So I think that this might be a good way for people to kind of understand how to use E.T.C to the maximum efficiency. And like you're going to see in this next deck, it kind of makes sense on some of these different ways that we can play him in more of a tempo fashion. Like yesterday, I saw Ali Straza playing this version, I believe, of Aggro Mage. I don't know if this is 100% the 30-card list that she was using. All I really did was I took out the Suspicious Alchemist and the already best-performing Aggro Mage list. But I will say that Ali had a good idea of using these cards in the ETC in order to give us some more playability. You have Kel'Thuzad the Inevitable in situations where you have a lot of skeletons that have died and you need to try and pressure against a deck with a lot of HP. You also have another sort of card that you can use in this light with Magister Dawngrasp, and you can keep powering up your hero power, so that way you're doing more than just pressuring with Frozen Touches and other forms of spells. And then there's also Vectilus in the situations to where you have combo potential and you have a bunch of Arcane Bolts and you just want to throw them to the face. And I think this is probably the only way really to play Vectilus, because this card felt so bad to put into your deck, and this kind of raises, again, the main way that a lot of people are playing E.T.C. You don't want to play Kel'Thuzad in aggro deck, you don't want to play Hero card in aggro deck, and you don't want to play this in not a combo deck. So it makes sense to just use E.T.C. in the situations to where, you know what, I could use a Kel'Thuzad right now for lethal. That's a good setup. And this is why E.T.C. is such a great card. It's extremely versatile. It's not exactly limiting in terms of like you always are going to run these cards because these are the best cards. No, it's about fleshing out the weaknesses of a deck or making its strengths even better. And this is a great example of how I believe E.T.C. is kind of doing a little bit of both. Next up, I have Quest Druid, and this is another situation to where you could probably take out the War Rider, because I really didn't like Ward Rider, so I decided to put in Reno Jackson in this deck since it does draw a lot. And against aggro matchups, this could very well like stall you the turn that you need in order to start winning the game. And again, you do have Jailer in those matchups to where you're at 10 mana, you can afford to play this card and just play for tempo, which is something that you can definitely do with a Nubercon brand plays. So I think that Jailer has a lot of potential in this version of Druid specifically. Theatar in order to, you know, be good against the mirror, against other combo decks, because, you know, if it happens, it really sucks. Maybe you use this as a counter Theatar to the opponent's Theatar, so that way you can steal back the card that they took. Regardless, it's still a good card to run in this deck because combo decks need some form of being able to interact with the other combo decks. But I do believe that this is just a decent deck to play by itself. You don't necessarily need E.T.C., but I do believe that E.T.C. really helps with giving us like these very specific situations to where if it happens against Quest Druid, it just kind of sucks. Like, we definitely need to go down this this matchup of, you know, against aggro where we need the spammy Arcanist into zombie. But I sometimes find my opponents playing around that, and it's hard in order to get these exact clears. You're going to be taking more damage, so I don't know. Reno feels like the best fit in this deck, and I used to run the War Rider because I tried to be faster than other combo decks, but that's just not going to happen when your main combo is already as efficient as Astalor is. So I believe this is probably the best way to play it in Druid, but I'm still kind of experimenting, and I'm wondering if there's a better card than Reno, but I like Reno, and I want Reno to be playable. And the last standard deck that we're going to be showcasing is from former Grandmaster Rami playing Big Demon Hunter. And, I mean, it may not look like the biggest deck in the world, but I actually love this list because it has the best of 3 different worlds, actually. We have Relics, we have Fail Spells, and we have big minions. And E.T.C. kind of helps us with every single one of those situations to where, you know, if we want to go for spell damage, you have the Silver Moon Arcanist. If you want to go for combo potential or for scam potential, you can easily play your Vanndarr. Or if you have this on turn 4 and you don't want to play Vanndarr, then you can easily scam a minion from your deck. Apparently, I don't have Carry of Felsoul anymore. And it's rotating out, and I didn't want to use the dust on it, so I'm probably not going to play this deck. But I'm not going to lie, I really want to try out this deck because being able to use Gilag, being able to use Ildari Inquisitor, seems like a pretty good way of being able to flesh out the Relic DK to where, you know, it has really strong early games, but sometimes it just misses that end game if you don't have, like, the Relic of Dimensions discounting your entire deck. So maybe E.T.C. can be a good way of kind of, like, giving yourself a middle ground to where, again, you can combo if you want to, you can cheat mana if you want to, or you can try to go for some kind of mana cheat game where you like cheat out the Z-Lag. But since this is now 7 mana instead of 6 mana, it's probably not as relevant. So again, not 100% sure on this particular card. I would craft it if I had the, oh god, hold on, the dust. Oh god, hold on a minute. Dust. Why can't I do this properly? There it is. There it is. That's how much dust I have. 485. I could have done so many different things in order to make that different. But regardless, I like to think that you guys enjoy my struggle. But regardless, I do think that this deck has a lot of potential. And it's, again, the best way to play 3 different decks right now. But at the end of the day, it is just a Relic deck that sometimes high rolls, you know, with the Relics and the Relic of Dimensions. But I think this is a fun way to play E.T.C. Now, before I show you guys the rest of these decks, there's actually a meme that I need to show everybody because, well, I wasn't expecting this. Hey, what you got there, even Dex? 4-cost card. Obviously, that's the reason why we're asking these questions. So the reason why this meme is super freaking funny is because guess what? Even Dex in Hearthstone can now run freaking can run odd cards. Have you ever wanted a Lotheb and an even Paladin? Yeah, that's right, you do. You also have the Dragon for AoE or Divine Favor for a bunch of draw. So like this is just a hilarious way of being able to get past these deck restrictions because they're technically not in your deck. They're in the E.T.C. They're in the green room, if you will. So they're not actually on stage right now. So you can't get mad at the people in the green room that may not meet the whatever requirements. So this is one really funny way of being able to do that. It's just typical even Paladin. By the way, all 3 of these lists that I'm going to be showing you from Wild are from Martian Boo, and I actually have his link down below to the video where he made 10 different lists showcasing how you can use E.T.C. in Wild. So if you want more Wild lists, definitely check out that video down below. But I think that, you know, even Paladin is still an extremely good deck right now, and I believe that it could definitely win a lot of games if you're trying to climb to Legend. The next deck is debatably the best deck in Wild, and the fact that you're able to use E.T.C. for, again, Lotheb, Anti-Magic Shell, and I guess I don't know about the Scourge in all honesty, but I'm guessing there are some situations where you just need to fill the board no matter what. And you also get extra corpses from this, so that is, you know, more gas for your Amerogar. But again, one of the best decks in Wild can now use Lotheb as a legitimate tool to close out games, because I can't imagine something better than Hero Power 1, play a Battle-Creeled Necromancer into Hero Power like Manthara, play E.T.C, Lotheb, and then boom, game just sink, completely yours at that point. You have Plague Strikes, you have, in order to, like, you know, deal with the board for the early game, so that way you can make sure your E.T.C Lotheb turn is uncontested to set up for the Grave Strength possibilities. Like, it's probably not that curated, because, again, corpse counts will be very important before you can play your Grave Strength, but the case kind of, like, you know, still stands where E.T.C being able to run Lotheb in even decks that are never supposed to have these kind of effective tools is just a really funny synergy that I don't believe anybody expected to happen when they were thinking about the new cards that were coming. Oh yeah, even decks are definitely going to be able to play odd cards, but it's funny, you can't play E.T.C in an odd deck, so odd decks can't get even cards. So even deck stonks have just gone massively up. And in case anybody here is a bot, here's a deck that you can easily bot to Legend because it's just regular even Shaman. But again, you have these extremely specific cards that do a lot. And wait, hold on a minute. Windshear Stormcaller? Well, I thought this was going to be a Lotheb. I remember looking at this for a second and I saw the Legendary, immediately thought it was Lotheb. But this does actually make sense in even Shaman, because you have a lot of ways of being able to summon a bunch of totems. So being able to summon like a turn 5 Alakir, is that even possible playing the 4-mana E.T.C? Hero Power, Weapon, Hero Power, Weapon Attack. It's technically possible if your opponent doesn't kill your minions, which is very unlikely. But theoretically speaking, you do have a turn 5 Alakir possible. Maybe you take out this card for Lotheb, because again, Lotheb's just super good. But Bloodlust in an even deck? What? No thank you. No thank you, dude. And then Grand Totem Eyesore as one of the only payoff cards in totem decks. But again, it's not hard running the deck because it's not that good. So you can use E.T.C every now and again to use this card against matchups to where you really do want it. Although, it might be better to make this a Lotheb. I don't know about you guys, but Lotheb is just a card that I can never say no to, and it just seems really good in even Shaman in particular, because if you do have, you know, a large board that you can easily throw a mini Bloodlust onto, essentially because of Totemic Surge, then you may not even really care about running Eyesore. But again, Eyesore is it's really sad that this is one of the only ways to play this card in this particular deck, but it's just, I don't think this card particularly makes the cut. But again, watch the Martian Boo video in order to have all details about these wild decks, and you'll find some more decks in that video as well. But there you guys have it. That is 11 decks in Hearthstone, 8 from Standard and 3 from Wild, so you guys can understand just exactly how people are trying to use E.T.C, because it's not as black and white as a lot of people are suspecting, like I thought originally, where it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna run this in a deck that you need you need the counter cards for. You need your specific tech cards in order to be good against them. But some people are just literally using this card as a way to put more good cards into their deck. Maybe there's a situation to where you don't want to run a duplicate of a card, but you still think that it might be useful in order to have the single card in your deck and then another card in the E.T.C. So there's a lot of different ways that you can brainstorm with this card, and we're just going to see more creative ways for people to use this. So if you like creative Hearthstone videos, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because you made it to the end of this video. Not a lot of people can say that. I believe barely 20% of anyone that watches my videos watches it all the way to the end. So guess what? I'm going to say this again, because if you guys have watched all the way before, you know what's happening. I love you. I love you for making it to the end of this video. So thank you guys so much for getting to this message, and we'll see you for the next video.